Hey friends, before I start the interview with Bill Holter, I just want to preface it with a few comments about the massive explosions seen in Tianjin, China. Now, in this conversation with Bill, we cover his thesis in his latest article titled, "Did the Final War Just Start?" And it's an excellent question. Has the monetary war just gone nuclear? Now, when Bill released this article, he took some heat for mentioning that the Tianjin explosion could have been a nuclear explosion. In the days since, it appears that was a very appropriate question. In fact, the Tianjin, China explosions will remain an important topic of conversation for some time because to date, China still cannot explain what caused the explosions. The size of the crater left by the explosion is gargantuan, as the death toll has now surpassed 110 people, with at least 90 others still missing. The question remains, what caused this apocalyptic explosion? The photos you see here show the scale of the devastation, with 8,000 mangled, melted cars and a huge crater blasted into the ground, in essence creating a lake. It's starting to appear quite evident that something unconventional happened in Tianjin. Was it a tactical nuclear device of some type? Were the devastating explosions caused by an even more exotic black budget device like the Rod of God space-based weapon as theorized by Jim Stone? And as I previously stated, officials insist it is not clear what triggered the two blasts, which happened about 30 seconds apart on Wednesday. For those of us already suspicious about Western governments and false flag operations, it is not out of the realm of possibility to wonder if a tactical nuclear weapon was used on this Chinese port to send the Chinese government a message: ditch the dollar and pay the price. Thanks for listening. Here's Bill Holter. Hey friends, thanks so much for tuning in. My God, is there a lot going on in the world today. China at the head of the list, and the Chinese-U.S. relationship, of course. We saw the port city of Tianjin rocked by an explosion, the size of which almost defies belief without mentioning the words tactical nuke. Bill Holter's back on the line. Bill, how are you, sir?
Good, Sean. How are you?
Hey, I'm hanging in there, and I sure do appreciate your work, Bill, because as you know, you really get dialogue moving between people. We posted your latest, "Did the Final War Just Start?" on Thursday, and it really rocked the comment section at SGT Report. Lots of people on your side and a lot of other people saying, "Are you crazy? That was no nuclear weapon that went off in Tianjin." And I just want to say, let's just put our own hubris aside and take a look at the aftermath, because whatever hit Tianjin, it was devastating. I mean, it basically took out a small city. All right, where would you like to start? Should we talk about that explosion? Should we talk about the Chinese devaluation? Or are they really part and parcel? Is one a reaction of the other?
I think it would be best to preface uh, what led up to that, and maybe that's not even connected, but it certainly is suspicious. If you go back 3 or 4 weeks, China announced an additional 600 tons, which is clearly bogus because they're importing more than 200 tons per month. And that 600 tons supposedly was over a 5 or 6 year period of time. So they clearly understated it. They did, by the way, announce another 19 tons this morning. So maybe this is going to become a weekly or monthly event where they start announcing more tonnage.
Right.
Following that, the IMF came out and said that they will not consider China as a component of the SDR until this time next year, September of next year. That was a real slap in the face to China, because they obviously they're already clearing with Yuan. It's the fifth largest currency in the world as far as clearing trades are concerned. Then after that, you had the IMF slap them in the face, and China's reaction was to devalue their currency. And not only did they devalue it once, they devalued 3 days in a row. They devalued roughly 5%, not quite 5%, which is not huge, but you have to understand two things. One is that's the opposite direction of what the U.S. has been asking, pushing, demanding, whatever. The U.S. has wanted China to strengthen their currency, and the U.S. has gone so far as to call China a currency manipulator, which is kind of laughable because we don't have a single market in the United States that's not rigged in one form or fashion. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, yes, it's only 5%, but you've got a lot of contracts, you've got debt, you have uh, derivatives that are affected by this 5% sudden and surprise devaluation. So you may very well have had asset positions thrown offside. In other words, it will create margin calls. And let me go one step further. The talk has been the Fed is going to tighten in September. That's pretty much an impossibility now because what they did, they devalued their currency, which basically strengthened the U.S. And this strong dollar since last fall has been a constant, day after day, nagging margin call on the global financial system. So China basically came out and said, when they devalued their currency, the U.S. there's no way they can raise rates in September because that would strengthen the dollar further. It would exacerbate the devaluation that they just did. It would also create a larger margin call to the system. The margin call being dollars.
Right. Well, let's talk about the Chinese gold stack. I was just interviewing Jeff Nielsen recently, and Jeff believes that China could have 4,000 tons of gold right now and not have done anything at all the least bit fraudulent or dishonest with their report of only 1,658 tons, he says, because all of the gold it adds from its domestic sources do not have to be reported. So I think that's a very important point because Alistair McLeod has been saying it could easily be over 10,000 tons of gold
Right.
that China has. I think you're probably more in line with that belief as well. Jeff
Yes.
Nielsen, his back of the envelope math, and he's really gone through the numbers carefully and diligently. He believes it's at least 4,000 tons easily. And so their official report of 1,658 tons is really just part of the ongoing propaganda. Now, why would they
Right.
want to play that card? Is it because they know they might find themselves directly in a shooting war with the United States government? Because if they came out and said we have 10,000 tons of gold, according to Nicholas Larkin at Bloomberg, that would justify a $64,000 an ounce gold price, which to me is the end of the dollar. So,
Right.
is that why they've soft pedaled their gold holdings?
It's hard to say. Obviously, if they came out and they said they had 10,000 tons of gold, we'd already have, pick a number, two, three, $4,000 an ounce gold.
Yeah.
The market would the market would seize up basically. If they announced a big number, 10,000, or like Alistair is talking about 20 or even 25,000 tons, COMEX would immediately evaporate every long contract, which right now I guess it's 124 ounces of paper contracted for every 1 real ounce. They would all stand for delivery, and you would have a force majeure. And that's where we're headed anyway. We're headed to the physical market pricing the physical product. Right now, you have a paper market that is continually diluted by naked contracts being sold. All you need to have to sell a COMEX silver or gold contract is dollars to put up as margin. That's all you need. You don't need physical gold or physical silver to sell a contract short.
Correct.
All you need is dollars. All you need is cash to put up as margin.
That's right.
And
Well,
right now it's 124 to 1, the amount of contracts sold versus the purported amount of total inventory at COMEX.
Right. Yeah, you could say that the Wall Street banksters, even those acting on behalf of the U.S. Treasury, J.P. Morgan, they don't have the gold, but they have endless stacks of paper. And so
Right.
here we sit in a situation where the world is turning to physical precious metals. And, we know that the currency wars have been going on for quite some time. Take a look at Jim Rickards' work in that area. And Jim Rickards has very close ties to the CIA and the Pentagon. He's done the war games. Jim Rickards knows what he's talking about when it comes to currency wars, but I'm not sure that this currency war bill is going in the way that Jim and his Pentagon buddies would like it to go. I think it's going in a very negative direction, which kind of leads me back to that explosion in Tianjin. That was an explosion the size of which really, really needs to be discussed. I saw one article underneath one of the videos of the explosion that it was equal to 21 tons of TNT. To me, it seemed like it could even be more than that. It could have been a tactical nuke. I'm no expert in that area, but we've seen very, very mysterious, powerful explosions in other parts of the world where the U.S. is entangled in conflicts. We saw one not too long ago in Yemen, and it
Right.
and it has to be discussed because it's very coincidental that it was a port city that was devastated. I think those of us that are suspicious of the Western powers definitely are wondering what actually happened at Tianjin. So you say you're going to talk to a nuclear expert, huh, and try to get to the bottom of this. I'd love to hear. I'd love to be a part or hear that conversation. You should record that and get that thing posted.
Yeah, I will. I'll write about that. I've got all kinds of comments last night. Uh, Most common of the comments was it was probably some sort of fuel ordnance bomb. Uh, what Looking at that, just as a layperson, I'm obviously no rocket scientist, nuclear scientist, but it looked like it was a spherical type of explosion. It didn't blast in one particular direction. It was spherical, so that made me suspicious. And yes, I will speak to a nuclear scientist, uh, just retired, had been in the industry for nearly 40 years. Uh, and I will write about that. I'll write what their opinion was, whether it was a nuke or B it wasn't.
Okay. Well, I think it just needs to be said again that regardless of what it was, it's very, very coincidental. And if you look at the aftermath of the absolute devastation of Tianjin, acres of cars wiped out, buildings absolutely decimated. It's hard to believe that it was just a standard explosion. Now, it could have been, but we do need to get to the bottom of it, and I'm not
Right.
sure how we're going to do that because I'm not sure China would be willing to be honest about what happened. But the bottom line, it's very, very coincidental, and it sparked a lot of conversation, and it's warranted conversation. I mean, if we take a look at the way that World Trade Centers 1 and 2 were brought down, those were brought down in very mysterious ways with exotic explosives. Anybody who doesn't know about that story in detail should watch 9/11 Mysteries, a great documentary from my friend Sophia Smallstorm. Those buildings expelled steel across the block, across the street, and into other buildings as they collapsed. And normal carbon-based fires don't expel
Right.
steel beams across the street.
Building 7 was more mysterious.
Yes. Absolutely. Building 7, which collapsed at about 5:25 in the afternoon, approximately 15 minutes after the BBC reported that the
That it
building
had come
had
down.
collapsed. I
Right.
don't think there's a better smoking gun in the history of false flag terror than that particular tidbit. Look that up, guys. BBC reports about the collapse of the Salomon Brothers building, World Trade Center 7, before it collapsed. The feed was cut, and 10 minutes later, the building came down like a house of cards. Yeah, also the smoking gun of 9/11. So many smoking guns of their terror. I know that Cameron, there in the UK, has said, Bill, that those of us that would question 7/7 or 9/11 should be locked up and put into re-education camps. There is another smoking gun, because if we were wrong, they would not care that we're having
Right.
these conversations.
That's true. I watched that. I watched Building 7 live, and I lived uh, for many years near New York City, and so I knew New York City. I knew which buildings were which, and the BBC reporter reported that it had gone down, and I was sitting there watching my TV, and I'm like, no way, it's right behind you. And then, of course, it went down. So that was, I saw that live. I saw it with my own eyes.
Wow. Well, then that was a wake-up call for you.
Yeah, I knew right away.
Just on day one. Well, you know what's interesting about this conversation, Bill, is that we've already come full circle here, because 9/11 and the Tianjin explosion and the currency wars. To me, this is all tied together, because what happened on 9/11 was very, very complex. Certainly, that was an operation that was used to bring the American people to endless unconstitutional wars that they would not have otherwise supported. But also, there are reports, Max Kaiser has talked about this in detail, about I think hundreds of billions of bonds that were due to come due the very next day on September 12th.
Right.
That information was all destroyed. The gold below the World Trade Centers, a lot of that went missing. It's a very, very complex story, and it's all part of this big picture. There has been a black ops war going on behind the scenes since before 9/11, but certainly 9/11 is a great thing to talk about in this conversation, because I think it's all tied together. It's all part of the big picture of trying to save this dollar-based, debt-based Ponzi.
I agree. And if you look at what happened the 2 weeks after 9/11, in order to clear trades, there were several hundred billion worth of bonds that were sent in and redeemed with no questions asked. So there was a 2 week window where the transactions happened, but not a paper trail or questions
That's right.
being asked.
Yeah,
So
I recall that. You're right.
that was important. And of course, the day before that, on September 10th, you had Donald Rumsfeld came out and said the Pentagon had lost track of $2.3 trillion.
That's right.
And that number now is 8.5 trillion.
Yep.
Think about that. How does 8.5 trillion slip through the cracks?
Well, it doesn't slip through the cracks; it gets looted out the back door.
Right. Exactly.
So, you're right, and I refer to that Donald Rumsfeld quote a lot in the effort to wake up people who are now checking out of this interview because we've dared to question the 9/11 official story. And for those that are hitting the stop button or the bail button or the "you people are nuts" comments tab, you really need to dig a little deeper and check your hubris at the door, because none of us have all of the answers, but those of us who have done the research can tell you what a false flag operation is, and we can tell you with 100% certainty that the official story of 9/11 is not true. And I think the involvement of the Israeli Mossad and intelligence agencies of the West certainly are at the head of the list of what actually went down that day. But at the end of the day, Bill, you need to follow the money, don't you? Follow the money. And one of my big problems with Jim Rickards for years has been that he said that following the money, who funded the operations, what happened with the trades that weren't settled, the airline trades, the futures trades, the profitable trades that traded on the back of the 9/11 false flag, is of little consequence. He says, we did a lot of research in this, and we know it was bin Laden, but beyond that, we haven't really done the research because we already know the answer. Well, that's the official story of the U.S. government. You don't really need an investigation. Bush didn't want to have the 9/11 Commission. It was only some of the families that questioned the story and wanted answers that pushed for the 9/11 Commission. He begrudgingly gave it to them and then front stacked it with Henry Kissinger. I mean, the fix has been in for so long, and anybody that can't see that there's more to the story about what happened on 9/11, we can't help them, Bill. And it's just like those that can't see that gold and silver are important to their future to protect themselves from the storm that's coming. If you don't understand that at this point, given all the criminality on Wall Street, given the 19 trillion in debt our nation is, given the currency wars that are happening, then we can't help you. It's hard. Bill, I've often said, we can't wake people up. Our friends, neighbors, and colleagues need to want to wake up. People can't wake up until they choose to.
That's correct. People need to dig for the truth. They're never going to find the truth without digging for it. You're not going to find it on CNN. You're not going to find it on ABC, NBC, CBS. You got to dig. And it's not even that big of a chore. It's not that difficult to do. The answers are out there if you're willing to look for them.
That's right. And, just one final thing, guys, as it relates to David Cameron saying that anybody that would question 7/7 or 9/11 should be put in a re-education camp. I just want to be very clear about why 7/7 was lumped into that, too. On the morning of 7/7, the 7/7 bombings in London, the London Underground, Peter Powers, who was running a company, that very day, Peter Powers came on the BBC and reported that they were running the exact same drills in the exact same locations. So his hair was standing on end when this happened, because then the drills had to go live.
Today we were running an exercise for a company, bearing in mind I'm now in the private sector, and we sat everybody down in the city, 1,000 people involved in the whole organisation, but the crisis team. And the most peculiar thing was we based our scenario on the simultaneous attacks on the Underground and mainline station. So we had to suddenly switch an exercise from fictional to real. And one of the first things is, get that bureau number. When you have a list of people missing, tell them. And so it took a long time.
Just to get this right, you were actually working today on an exercise that envisioned virtually this scenario.
Almost precisely.
Isn't that the age-old tale? There's drills being set up run by the military or the government or intelligence agencies, and then the drills go live. So all the assets are in place, and so is the cover story. It happened on 7/7. And Bill, do you recall FEMA was in New York City on one of the piers the day before, completely set up because they were having a drill on 9/10. And then on 9/11, oh, how convenient. FEMA's already there.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, didn't mean to turn this into a 9/11 conversation. Let's just turn this back to what Jim Sinclair has recently told you. You wrote that Jim said just a few days ago, for the first time in many a moon, gold has very limited downside from here and could move to 2,000 as an initial stop. You write, do you believe it was a coincidence that he speaks now? It's very clear to all of us that gold could move to 2,000 in a heartbeat. My God, Nicholas Larkin said it could go to 64,000 if China just admitted they had 10,000 tons of gold.
Well, you could wake up Monday, today's Friday, you could wake up Monday morning and the market's not open. And if the markets don't open, then what is your gold worth? Some people will say, well, it's worthless. Not around the world. You could see markets close and the inability to transact, and the flight of capital into a very tight and in backwardation gold market. You could literally see the price double and nothing trade.
Well, that's true, and it's doubly so for silver. I mean,
right.
I just had a conversation with our friend SRS Rocco, Steve St. Angelo from SRS Rocco, and it's stunning. The run is on for physical silver globally, Bill, and it's now quantifiable.
Yeah, silver has been very tight. Of course, you've seen the from the retail side of it. Silver's on back order for 2 to 4 weeks, and you see both gold and silver in London in backwardation.
Yeah, and the SGE, the inventories at the SGE have been absolutely gutted.
That's decimated. Yeah.
Yeah, and the COMEX is a joke. I just bought some more silver recently. Just took order some silver, and it just feels good. It feels good to get it in your hand because you know how rare it is, and I like to buy the government-issued coins, and to me it's all it's pirate booty, Bill. I look around at my friends, neighbors, and colleagues, and they don't have any, and they don't even care. But they don't have any, and I've got the pirate booty, and I just love it because I know how rare it is.
Well, it surely is. And while we're talking about silver, the ratio of over 70 to 1 is ridiculous because silver is taken out of the ground at about 10 to 1.
Yeah.
Silver, in my opinion, is going to be gold on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think you'll see silver outperform gold 4 to 1, and gold will be the second best asset on the planet.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't disagree. I think if we ever see an honest silver price, it will be it'll be a story for generations because people have no idea. As you wrote in your article here, we need some more truth bombs. I think for a long time, Bill, the powers that be on planet Earth have been playing along with Wall Street. They've been playing nice with Washington, and now I think the gloves are coming off. And you wrote, for months I've been suggesting Mr. Putin would drop a truth bomb revealing all sorts of false flag events and fraud perpetrated by the United States. I still believe this is to come, and now even more likely. Why? Well, you tell us why, Bill, and I sure hope he drops some truth bombs about 9/11.
Well, it's like you said, the gloves have been taken off. You can only push someone or a country so far. And the truth coming out would be cutting the dollar off at the knees. You would see an absolute collapse in the dollar. If you see a collapse in the dollar, that weakens our ability militarily. So, I mean, if you want to call it a chess war strategy, then call it that. I really believe it's more likely now that the information that they've been threatening to reveal, they're going to reveal with China's blessings.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's the East aligned against the West. I mean, it
Right.
just is. And it's a new paradigm, a brave new world. And that's why we have these conversations, as you know, Bill. I mean, trying to document this collapse is a full-time job. And I would just like to leave people with this. At the end of Bill's article, he concludes, I truly do ask for your comments regarding what happened in Tianjin. Please don't send me opinions. I would like to hear exactly why or why not the explosion was nuclear. I will believe a tactical nuke until someone proves to me it was not. May God help us all with what comes. And the reason I wanted to end with that, Bill, is because some folks in the comments were very proactive and helpful, and others were very destructive and said, some even said, well, but Bill's gone off the rails. If he believes it was a nuke, then he's lost all his credibility, and I'm not going to read his stuff anymore. Check your hubris at the door. All any of us are doing here in the truth movement is doing our level best to try to uncover truth, because we know the Mockingbird mainstream media and the U.S. government isn't going to help us get to the core of truth. And what happened in Tianjin was certainly a nightmare and a tragedy for anyone living near that explosion. And again, just very, very coincidental that it happened just a day or two after China devalued the yuan. And how many more devaluations are there going to be, Bill?
It's hard to say. They could continue, they could stop. China's going to do what's best for China. I was going to mention to you the motto of the CIA is there is no such thing as a coincidence.
Yes, that's right. And the motto of the Mossad is, by way of deception thou shalt do war. So anybody who thinks we're nuts for asking these questions, check your hubris at the door. Hey, Bill, thanks so much for your honesty, your candor, your willingness to speak truth. I know you're going to take heat because we dared to talk about the 9/11 myth, but I really do. But for me, it just elevates your status as a truth teller. I mean, thank you very much. I think it's cool that we had this conversation and you're willing to go there.
Thank you, Sean. It's my pleasure.
All right, and God bless. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Bill, by the way, before we lose you, do you want to call attention to any website or collaboration between you and Jim Sinclair?
Yeah, sure. You can find my work and much other work at Jim's site. It's jsmindset.com.
Very good, jsmindset.com. The great Bill Holter and his new partner there, Jim Sinclair. We really appreciate all you do, Bill. Thank you so much. And guys, thank you for tuning in. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. We appreciate truth tellers. We appreciate those trying to uncover truth. Just work with us on some of this stuff. You know, don't throw us under the bus, because sometimes we jump to a conclusion that may or may not be wrong. I think Bill might be right in this case. I think tactical nukes are being used. I think one was used in Yemen, and certainly a government that could pull off 9/11 is capable of anything. God bless. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, give it a like. Send it along to your friends, neighbors, and colleagues. Who knows? Maybe we could wake up a few more people. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Sean.
All right. God bless, guys. Bye-bye.